We are doing Extra Life again this year, where you can mash buttons, roll dice, play games, and help kids along the way. I hope you'll be a part of that with us. Stick around after the video for more information. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening. If I was about to forget every comic story I'd ever read, but could first record a message for myself just before the mind wipe, this would be the result.
You're a wonderful man, and you're so tight.
Condor Man, da-da-da-ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues, where I talk about my favorite DC comics of the past that are still affordably available today, blabbing about why they're special to me and what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of life. Now, warning up front, this series does freely contain spoilers, but I think even spoiled, the stories that I feature on this series are still well worth reading. For more info about the intent of this series and what to expect from it, you can check out the video on the Christian Geek Central YouTube channel titled Essential Issues Series Introduction. Alright, this time around, I want to talk about my pick for the essential introduction to Batman and his origins. Now this is, it's hard to choose like a definitive origin story for Batman because it keeps being retold in small snippets in so many stories. His origin isn't just what led to his crime-fighting abilities, as is largely the case with many, many other heroes. You know, the Flash gets struck by lightning and hits the chemicals and all that stuff. You know, Green Lantern, he gets a ring and stuff like that. But Batman's origins, as is also the case arguably with Spider-Man, Batman's origin is what motivates his crime fighting. It doesn't just answer the question of how he fights crime, what makes him effective at fighting crime. It answers the question of why he fights crime. It's that iconic imagery of young Bruce Wayne's parents being killed right in front of him, you know, and you can see that imagery brought back briefly in countless Batman stories across all forms of media. So an essential Batman origin story, I think, has to have something else that you're looking for on top of that. You could find stories that cover his time overseas training to gain the skills of Batman, but a lot of Batman origin stories use training montage panels well enough to convey that information. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns is certainly considered the definitive Batman story by many, and it also retraces his origins via flashbacks. So I think that could be an option. It really rebooted the character like never before and is largely the basis for how Batman has been written in comics and other media ever since then. But that Batman is also more extreme and arguably a maniac. He's so disturbed in that story that he's more fascinating to me as a psychological specimen than he is admirable to me as a hero. What makes Batman admirable to me is his driving motivation for justice when it comes up against his human limitations. And that is combined with his origin really well, I think, in Frank Miller's Batman Year One. Now, as a bonus, this story also explores the beginnings of a couple other key characters in Batman's world, including Lieutenant and future Commissioner Jim or James Gordon, and Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman. I could personally take or leave Catwoman's involvement in the story, but Jim Gordon's story is so strong that I once even saw an amateur college production that adapted only Gordon's story from this work to create a self-contained one-act play. And the script totally worked with only a few brief references to Batman. That's how strong Jim Gordon's story is on its own. So I think this book is a great read. Let's dig into it a little bit. The first page of the book sets up the parallel stories of Jim Gordon and Bruce Wayne as they each enter Gotham by different means, with different thoughts born out of their very different lives. But as the story progresses, we see these two men start to nearly cross paths, leading to a final scene that I won't spoil, but I'll still kind of comment on toward the end, shared between them, that casts a very interesting interpretive shadow over their entire relationship throughout comic book history. So that's kind of the through line I follow, is the parallel stories between these two men. This Gotham City is an ugly reflection of real-world evils. It includes child prostitution. It includes police corruption. It's grounded enough that Batman's first night on the town puts him up against common punks stealing a television, and he nearly screws the whole thing up. The first comic book stories that were ever published were often about street-level, real-world evils, and Batman is especially suited to tackle those kinds of issues. This story is just a reminder that we live in a broken world, and I think that it's that street-level sensibility to a lot of Batman's stories that helps him to continue resonating so strongly with me and so many others. And in this broken world, we've got Batman, this man who appears to be something otherworldly, using fear and superstition to create a legend for himself. The darkness and intimidation tactics that he uses make his maneuvers and technology seem supernatural to the criminals he takes down. And this plays out beautifully in a scene where flashback panels of Batman attacking a group of criminals is contrasted with the exaggerated descriptions of a witness to those events who is convinced Batman is some kind of creature. The art style, while rough and evocative of the more primitive style in the 1940s comics, I think, is also stylized and uses heavy inks and obscured details to represent the shadowed half-glimpses people typically see of Batman. While the animated adaptation of this story is one of my favorite of the DC animated movies, something I think is lost of the rough nature of the art and how it affects the mood of the story for me. Those who have seen Batman Begins will recognize a few story elements drawn from these pages, including Batman's use of a signaling device to summon a cloud of bats that obscure his presence and allow him to escape a building surrounded by police. But one of the most memorable story elements to me is Jim Gordon's affair with Detective Essen, which the corrupt police department tried to use against him as blackmail so he would fall in line with their criminal practices. Gordon's only option, if he wanted to continue pursuing honest police work, was to be honest with his wife about the affair. It wrecked his life at home for a while. But confessing to his wife also freed him to continue on the right path, because the corrupt police department couldn't use that against him anymore. Whether Frank Miller was aware of this or not, he illustrates a vital truth about both evil and confession. Evil wants to hide away and not be exposed, and when we allow ourselves to hang on to secret sins in our habits or thoughts, we prevent ourselves from growing and really experiencing firsthand the tireless grace and forgiveness of Jesus. We become imprisoned and enslaved to secrets and lies that we have to keep perpetuating in our relationships in order to maintain the facade that we are a certain kind of person. But confession and the grace of Jesus, along with a community of believers around us who also understand and apply that grace, that frees us from burdens of shame or keeping up appearances. It hurts to confess, and it can wreck us for a little bit, like it does Jim Gordon in this story, but the freedom that comes after allows us to become more and more who God made us to be, just as it allowed Jim Gordon to continue cleaning up the police department and becoming the police officer and eventually the commissioner that we know and admire him as. Now, in case you haven't read it, I won't spoil the details of the final scene shared between Batman and Gordon, but reading it now as a dad, I can see why this interaction built such a loyalty in Gordon toward Batman. And the possible extent of that loyalty is teased as it relates to an age-old question about Gordon's knowledge of Batman. So there you have it, Frank Miller's Batman Year One. You can get it for only just about $10 on Amazon. I think it's well worth a read. And now, finally, having featured an intro to the DC Universe as a whole, as well as its two most recognizable characters, Superman and Batman, next time, finally, we get to talk about one character that's far less recognized, but who happens to be my favorite superhero in all of comics publishing. Next time I will share my thoughts on the essential origin story for Green Lantern. But right now I'd like to take some time to write a tune for pre-made rhyme. The lyrics kind of never change, but the melody gets rearranged. I never know what I'll create to say how much I appreciate Libre, Libre. Thank you for supporting me, and SBP and CGC. And now to all who hear this tune, thank you as well. Please come back soon. Want to hear your name in song? Check out our page on Patreon! christiangeekcentral.com. November 3rd, Dragon Quest XI and Spider-Man for PS4 are coming out within 3 days of each other. I'm going to try and review both games. I don't have time to make a brand new Extra Life recruitment bumper. November 3rd. Once again this year, Christian Geek Central is participating in Extra Life. This is a charity that raises funds for the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals, which provides free medical care to children whose families could otherwise not afford it. And this is very often for critical, life-saving treatment. Joining our team only requires a willingness to ask your family and friends to consider donating toward your fundraising efforts. Participants also usually do something fun and game-related to draw attention to their fundraising efforts, like a special game night at your home or your church. Or like me, you could do a crazy 24-hour video gaming marathon. Now, I'm theming it around video games, but really this event can be themed around any kind of gaming, which includes both video games and tabletop games of any kind. What you do to raise funds is entirely up to you, but I would love for you to consider joining the Christian Geek Central Extra Life team. As team leader, I'll be there to help answer your questions, provide some helpful tips if I can, and just in general be your fundraising cheerleader and try to draw attention myself to your fundraising efforts. You can get more information about the event as a whole at extra-life.org, and if you choose to sign up there, be sure to select Christian Geek Central as your team so I can get in touch with you and then just help in whatever way I can. Fundraising can begin at any time, but our main push is going to be through the month of October leading up to November 3rd. That's the annual Extra Life Game Day, when I'll be streaming my 24-hour video gaming marathon live and trying to stay awake without throwing up. More details on my live stream as we get closer to it. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.